How are you?
Nice to see you. You all right?
Good to be here.
Nice to have you here.
It's very
bright,
exciting.
sunny morning.
It's absolutely beautiful. I'm dying to have a look.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, do you want to start? This is it. This is the hallway. Yeah. Great window there out into sort of London, and it's half a mansion block, so you get the light that you don't normally get in a mansion block. It's an incomplete mega structure. Yeah.
It feels quite New Yorky actually looking out there. That's
yeah,
the fire escapes.
Yeah, fire escapes. It's quite gritty, quite grainy.
Yeah.
But across the road, the block is complete, and therefore the inside is getting no light, and you're looking across at your neighbour.
Okay.
Whereas, because they never bought the Georgian properties, it's like an incomplete megastructure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is where actually most of the family time is spent. North facing, but the benefit of north facing is you get lovely light onto the buildings opposite, which we're currently cleaning up and doing up, and they're beautiful terracotta, Edwardian looking, but actually late Victorian, 1897. But we've been restoring that. You can see all the kind of rather nice details.
I mean, conventional wisdom says north facing's no good. What do you think about that?
I think conventional wisdom's often wrong, isn't it? I mean, at least a quarter of the world faces north. I mean, the nice thing is you're not getting sun into the windows. It doesn't show the dirt on the windows.
Yeah.
And then you're looking out onto, if this was if this was the countryside, you'd be looking out onto sunny fields.
Yeah, yeah,
you know.
yeah.
So in fact, it's actually can work very well.
Yeah.
You know, nothing is quite as it says it in the books.
Yeah. And I obviously have to mention your art collection. So tell me about some of these things.
Basically, my parents were, my father was an architect, they were collectors in the 60s, 50s and 60s. So they bought stuff they liked when they liked it. And then over time, I inherited it all when my father died 25 years ago. They sold their house and it all came to me, rather luckily. I was the architect one. So that's a Joe Tilson. And then of course, the reality is, it looks very nice now. This is the reality of our life.
Look at that.
The kids love the pretend idea that we look intellectual, but actually that's where the real Joe Tilson disappears into the corner.
Yeah.
That's the real action.
I noticed you've got storage under here, so I mean it's obviously very clutter-free. Clutter-free. So what's going on in there? What have you got in there?
So in there is actually surplus debris of hi-fi, Wi-Fi and all that kind of stuff. And also there are some speakers, so hence the speaker covers. It's about life, the bric-a-brac of life being on display, but at the same time, there is junk in life. And obviously,
you want to see the things that look good and not the things that don't.
Exactly.
I mean, and all this glassware up here, what's the story with that?
That's just glassware collected over time, and it just actually, I think there's a light that comes, my wife says we have too many switches, but one of these will turn a light on, and then it lights up rather beautifully, then reflects the television and gets turned off. See, she's right, we have too many switches. It's the last one then, is it? No, that's that one. So that one. There you are.
Ah.
Yeah. So you just get a nice. I was always brought up with the Charles Eames aesthetic of objects being out and enjoyed, and then they're just people give you stuff over time, you collect it, and the rich mix of colours kind of appeals.
Yeah. I don't fancy the dusting though.
And then this is the all action room where we eat there at that end of the table. So this is a kind of purpose-made kitchen. My builders I've worked with for 15 years on this project, which has been 10 projects. So we made a kind of big, robust kitchen with big, robust plywood, robust doors, because we've done a few kitchens in our time.
And this is metal on top.
Yeah, it's an acid washed brass finish.
Really nice.
And
really nice.
And then chose some nice historical paint colours. And then this is a kind of hard wearing. Of course, when you first put it in, you worry about it's leathered rather than it's not.
Yes,
it's not honed.
It's not
it's
smooth.
Not shiny.
Yeah.
And it's got a really nice finish called leathered because it feels a bit like leather. Very nice Portuguese marble guy I know. So he kind of buys it, splits it, does all the grains run through quite nicely.
Good. And then spatially, I'm interested, so you all gather around this end here, so someone's cooking.
Someone's cooking, someone's cooking, you're eating here, there is a dining table there, you can pull out, it's a very nice simple one, but it has a double width so it can get 14 people around it. But of a weekday, we tend to eat here.
And why is that? Why would you be here and not there? I mean, how would you describe that?
Because it's kind of a bit more we're chaotic. There's
Yeah.
two 12-year-old girls, a 10-year-old girl, and there's a bit of homework being done there, and there's stuff here, and then we all eat here, and it's kind of slightly less formal than that. And as we're a family of 5, you can get 2, 2 and 1 rather than 4, 4 and 1 at the end. It's just also gives a ritual to weekdays versus a more formal Sunday when someone might come around for dinner kind of thing.
It's a remarkably quiet street in an incredibly urban area.
It is an incredibly busy, noisy area, but this kind of, it is pretty good up here.
Yeah.
You know, we always think it's like having a house in the sky.
Yeah.
So you come to the front door, this is the ground floor, tiny balcony, not a huge amount of use, but then we've got Regent's Park, Paddington Gardens, Hyde Park, Holland Park, you know, you've got everything around you. And we're very lucky, London's a pretty green city anyway, but we're right in the heart of that greenness here, so it's good.
All right, let's have a look at your living space.
This is a room where we do sit, or I might sit, if you want quiet. And there's a fire that we connected to the historical flue around there, which is a very nice Danish fire.
It's really lovely. You've basically used this rug to kind of demarcate the space within the space, haven't you?
Yeah, so Matt Bourne, who runs Christopher Farr, and I went to school together. So all the rugs are little projects that I've sketched out and then he's had made for us using kind of the handmade techniques they have. So I wanted a big black border, holds it all together. And then this is furniture I inherited. So this is like 50-year-old, nicely worn pony skin Corb. So it's a mixture of the old and the new. That was a second-hand table off my sister. So stuff has all moved around. Then that is the great Jean Prouvé chair, which is actually modern and comfortable. Yeah. So I live in Eames, but I've now started to live in Prouvé because actually the headrest is lovely. And actually, you know, a lot of modern furniture is low and uncomfortable, but that one's remarkably good.
Oh yeah.
You can sit there reading.
Yeah. I think it's so interesting that you, in one open space, you've got so many different functions. As you say, you've got kind of family dining, more formal dining. You've got a sitting area where you can sit quite formally, or as you say, you can sit in a more relaxed way.
We created a kind of working larder in there, so the oven, the fridge, the freezer, and a working sink are there. So we do use this, but this is more, you know, talk about being tidy or not tidy. This allows this to look slightly better and everything gets shoved. We went to someone's house and it was like a scullery, and Fiona said, they've got a scullery, it's a brilliant idea. When people come, you just dump everything in there. Yeah. And then I started designing this with her, and she started saying, well, why are you putting all this marble in there? And I said, it's a scullery to you, but to me, it's a pantry where I can put ham and cheese out.
Right.
So, and then it's got the drinks cabinet, which you know, is kind of, you know, part of the life of the building. So it does double up. You can dump all your stuff there. There's two drawers and a dishwasher, 2 dishwasher drawers, and then your microwave, oven, fridge and freezer. So it's actually quite a hard working space, and it borrows light from the room beyond. So it's kind of, that's got this clear story light, which again was something I was brought up with in a modern house where my parents lived in the country. So clear story lights actually works incredibly well. And so this, even though this is quite robust, it's also quite pretty. And then that's a beautiful, if you like details.
So if someone wanted to replicate that, what would you call it? Fluted?
Yeah, it's a concave fluting. Yeah.
Concave fluting.
And it's the same behind the fire, but there it's got a Doric top, no end. So as the Doric column always goes all the way through. So it's kind of, and again, that's the reality of life. When I was younger, I used to be slightly more optimistic and say, let's have the wall flowing through. Now I'm a bit older, I'm a bit more like, I know that it will look terrible in a year or two. And then that's the same with this hallway. This was added.
Right.
Because school bags, hockey sticks, football boots, everything. This hallway is like a transit yard. Things coming in and going out, you know what I mean? So we've tied it for you, but normally there's 3 bags going to the charity shop, there's this, that, there's 3 school bags, there's sports bags, then that gets hammered. So and also, actually, we decided that mirroring that with a staircase actually
really works.
Completed the room anyway. I've grown to like cellularization of space and acoustic privacy, but that I didn't want a door here because it's a door to nowhere. So that fire curtain allows that to shut down in the event of a fire. This used to be a door here when it was rented, then I moved the door there.
Yeah. Well, also I noticed you have a glazed door.
Yeah, well that just gets some light into the hallway.
Yeah.
Which is quite, and again you borrow, I quite like borrowing vistas, so that's a vista into this room, the long dimension here, and then in here you get another long dimension, you know, through there. This is obviously a very big flat. It used to be, when we lived upstairs, which is now our bedroom, it was a very small flat, and that was all about trying to make a small flat have a generosity and a dimension, or indeed volume. And again, this is 2.9, so it's being historical. It's got a good height. This was the top of the mansion block, and then those, where we'll go later, were added in the late 70s, early 80s. So you know, the block ended with the pepper pots. Then there was just a roof and plant room and maybe a few servants' rooms. But then in the 80s they built what they call the penthouses, which was the original flat I bought. Then we drilled down to this flat.
I've got to ask you about your Edoardo Paolozzi collection here.
I grew up with this in London in the 60s. This is the As Is When series, which is the life of Ludwig Wittgenstein. I inherited it, and then when I always had it in storage, ready, cleaned up, and then I got it all out when we had the space to hang it. You need a big space. Now some people say it's quite dominant. I tried it without it, but I actually think it sort of became the theme of this room, hence the two cabinets that kind of play off it. We went to the Sorrento Hotel by Ponte.
Yeah, the Parco dei Principi.
Yeah, exactly. And a mate of mine discovered the original people who still hand make them, and he now imports them. So I got him to import them for me, and then he now imports them. And then these are 5 spares at the HMM model shop, framed up to make a somewhere to put stuff.
A fruit repository.
So nothing is wasted.
Yeah.
Everything's been properly recycled.
It's really good.
You end up with a dead wall. So I ended up creating a little storage for the table, leaves and spares in there.
So this is basically kind of kids' homework art room.
Art room. I mean, look, it sounds, it's just the product of, we have more space than we thought we'd ever have. Yeah. Because we never thought we'd connect the 2 flats up and take all of it, but we did. So if you got it, we don't have a second home, you might as well enjoy it. And it does give you a kind of chance where one can be in here, one can be in there doing piano, one can be in there, there's a lot of television being watched. You can balance all those things out.
It's really nice. So I see you've got a pivoting door here.
Yes.
Why?
Because I like the idea that this door would be open a lot more.
Yeah.
And therefore, again, that idea of, you can close it all down, but you can have the doors open, and you can be borrowing vistas. But somehow a door, I mean, that is not a pivoting door, because that door's closed a lot more. A door on a pivot without handles feels more like a plane. Yeah. Rather than a door with handles, because this one is very much a door that's closed into another room where they, so that's the stop, and then this is much more of a flow, and so we'll be in there, 1 or 2 of them will be in here, you know, so it all kind of connects much more. Yeah. And there's the clear story, borrowing light into that kitchen scullery.
Really nice. Yeah, very modernist, isn't it?
It's a great thing, actually, that high level light. And, I mean, my mum's house, you just get views of trees. Here you get views of artwork.
Light fittings.
Yeah, exactly, light fittings, exactly that.
And like many architects, you're a devotee of the Dieter Rams.
Yeah, I'm a big. I mean, Mark Adams is an old friend of mine. It's a fantastic idea that this German product designed by Dieter Rams is now made all over England and then assembled in Leamington, and it's endlessly refined. And what I like about it is it's sort of invisible. Yes, you don't. Once you put the objects on it, so this is supposed to be for magazines, but then they put all their art on it. This hides all the rubbish, and the whole thing is a sort of invisible system, which is really very neat. Yeah. But if they're here with their friends, they can all come in here, and then if they're staying over, you can move that sofa to there. This again, which is something I inherited, folds away, and then that flips down, and there's a bed in there. Then you get these amazing views. You talk about New York. I mean, I call it the Mary Poppins view of London. It's churches and chimney pots. Very much so. And the old tower in the background.
But I'm always unsure about what to do with the kids' stuff and photographs of the children and things. But if you have, what's nice about a room like this, which is sort of for them, it feels right.
I've been to houses where there are photographs of the family everywhere. Yeah. Which I find extraordinarily not what I would ever do.
And why is that?
Because I just think you're there.
You're there.
You're there. You don't need photographs of yourself looking happy. I mean, but this is more fun. The girls produce lots of stuff and they make lots of thank you cards and they go out and they're gone. And I do have boxes of their drawings. I do tend to keep them because I like drawings. And then this is the staircase we drilled through. So we lived upstairs, we bought the roof, developed that, and then we bought this, then we let it out for 7 or 8 years. Then, because the kids were getting older, it was a bit like, well, if we're going to make all this space into one, let's do it now. So this is the staircase built by the builders. This is the secret cupboard.
Oh, that is excellent.
And this is, I think it's about 3.5 years old now, and it still hasn't failed. You know, I live in a world where failure is a possibility, or even a likelihood.
Yeah.
But they've done it beautifully.
Yeah.
The door's still there. It's proper.
Yeah.
Muscular hinges.
Yeah. Four hinges.
And a beautifully made plywood on plywood form as like a biplane. And that's where the kids shovel their junk.
It's very satisfying. What kind of timber have we got here?
It's oiled American walnut.
Okay.
So you got American walnut oiled, you got doors that I've recycled which were American walnut polished, because the original flat was more like a boat on the roof, because another friend of mine, Roger Zagolovich, has a house in Poole with his wife, Carola, and the house is the interior of the Mauritania, the ship. So the bedrooms are cabins with portholes. Literally, the guy bought the second-class ladies' lounge and 4 cabins and built a 30s house around them. So I like the idea that the original flat was more like being in a boat in the sky with porthole windows everywhere. Uncut timbers, it's all modulated. They're actually, to the non-purist, there are 42mm and 44mm planks that allows them to modulate, because you obviously got a longer one on your winder than on your tread, and dimensionally they don't match.
Okay.
And this is all done on site, in situ, worked out. I had a sketch, but then we used to work it out every morning, work out how to do it, because we were living upstairs while this flat was done and the staircase was taken up and then stopped. Then we moved downstairs and then they took back over that flat. So it was a logistics. It was a 3-year project that almost broke all of us, me, the builders, the kids, everyone. But you can see there, you get the idea was to pull that back and get a void and get light, and again get this invitation to walk upstairs and get that volume going in the house.
Let's have a look. It's definitely inviting me up.
So that's the old front door.
Ah.
So we used to live here. This was nothing to do with us. And then we bought it when Aura was born, or just before she was born, because it was available. I used to joke it was my flat, because this flat, I lived on my own, then Fiona moved in, then we had 3 kids. But before she moved in, we bought upstairs and added a room, so that helped. But I've kept the old front door, so people can come and visit here, not downstairs, and go straight up that staircase. Wow, I have an office. So often on a Friday or midweek when I'm in the West End, rather than get back to Clerkenwell, I'll have some meetings here and then make the whole day work around home in the office.
You can leave my book out as well.
Yeah, I know, I've got your book out. Yes, I left some of my books out. Actually, your book's been there for quite a long time. And then there's Gio Ponti. I don't buy big books, but actually he's one of the few people who's good enough to fill them. So our own books we make quite small.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Apologetic books.
Yeah, exactly. Where Ponti can fill a big book.
Ponti's allowed it. Yeah.
Exactly. This used to be the family living room. This is where we lived. And then what happened in the 80s when they built the this penthouse, as they call it, shed on the roof, they floated the new floor over the neighbours below so as not to make too much noise. There are certain steels that hold the building together. So when we bought downstairs, and when we decided to connect them up, I took this floor off and dropped it down. So it's slightly New York. There are 2 benefits. One, you get more volume, but I also quite liked, although I've now done my knee in, but I quite like the stepping down into the room, and that frames a bed space and that's a bath space. So there are lots of level changes. Before the kids came, I did the flat up, then Fiona moved in, then we bought upstairs, then the twins came, so we moved a bathroom and put it where the staircase is now. Then Aura came, so we redid the kitchen. So we've lived too much with builders, but we've managed to remain friendly with each other and the builders. And so this is our room now, so it's quite ridiculous. What we used to live in as a family has become our bedroom suite. That used to be a balcony that we've turned into a dressing room.
This is really nice, the sort of window seat.
Yes, exactly. This is
perch on it.
Exactly. It does take the weight.
And talk to me about the Gio Ponte tiles.
You want to come in? So there's the bath. Those are the tiles, and they're the spares from all the different bathrooms.
Okay.
So Ponte always made compositions with them. So I looked at his compositions and made a composition of the different tile types. So that tile is the different layering of this circular tile, just laid in a different way, and then that one is the same tile but with the circle reversed with the dark on the outside. So actually it was quite an interesting essay in the simple geometry of tessellation.
There's a theme emerging here though, isn't there, which is that you've used it and then you've discovered where the high wear areas are and done something about it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the theme is, I got it right 70% of the time, but the other my one is, don't try and do everything. Yeah. Get the basics right, and then get the spatial arrangements right, they were all right, and then add the detail where you need to, rather than finishing it. Yeah. Wherever possible, trying to extract volume out of the space and allow the journey to be kind of interesting. And this is a hanging office above that I've hung into this space because there was the opportunity to do it. So you can't, in a highly complex project, you can't solve it. We do in a real world situation of a proper job. We have three-dimensional BIM models, but in a domestic project, it is, I think part of it is allowing it to emerge.
Is this your dressing room through here?
Yeah, my dressing room, yes. This is. I mean, the girls laugh because this used to be a bathroom. Then there was 2 children in this room, and that's the old fireplace. So I recycled the fireplace. Ah. So that was sitting there. That's the plan of Le Corbusier's Pavillon Suisse, which is my old man's favourite plan. So he had that printed, again, many, many years ago. And so they all come together as a piece.
Why, out of interest, why do you think this is your father's favourite plan?
He just thought it was the most, he had to, I think during the postmodern row, he had to give a talk about, and he just said, find me a plan that is more beautiful than that. I think he meant it as both a visual, but also if you look at the kind of the softness of that space, the folding nature of the staircase, and that wall, the kind of Gabion wall, does not align with that wall. Yeah, just the plastic twisting of space, and obviously it was the famous early pilotti through which you walked to enter the pavilion that was sitting outside the pavilion above. So I think it just became important to him as an architect. So and then I've kept it because obviously I went to see the Pavilion Suisse 30, 40 years after him, so there's a bit of history there. But that was a bathroom, became a bedroom. That was a bedroom for 2 kids. Now it's my dressing room, so it's spatial luxury. It really is. Trying to open the vistas up and playing with the mirror there. Which obviously the cameraman doesn't want to see the mirror or be seen in the mirror.
He's not here. What cameraman?
Exactly. I don't have boxes full of stuff. I have everything is out. Everything I like is out to be enjoyed. Cigarette cards, stamps, letters. So it's just kind of trying to surround myself with fun things. That's the theatre we've recently completed above Tottenham Court Road Tube Station, HMS Belfast. I never had train kits as a kid, but I'm a football nut and a Sheffield Wednesday nut, and I bought myself the Sheffield Wednesday 1933 locomotive from Hornsby. I do actually have the track, and I put it up once or twice, but I just like the fact I've got it and it's out now.
This is obviously quite a personal space to you. It's got a lot of personal things in it, and it's a dressing room. So how does that work? Sort of, I suppose, in terms of the kind of conceptually and sort of emotionally.
So at the end of the day, I come here and I dump everything for the next day on this top. That's the job I've got to do, which is to rewire some lights. And then this just means I'm surrounded by a little bit of history. So that's my late sister who died 25 years ago. Pictures of people, it's architecture, people I knew. So it's just kind of comforting, which is what a home can be at its best. And I wouldn't want that out we talk about pictures, I wouldn't want that out in the public realm. It's more like this is a private space, so therefore you can kind of surround yourself with life's memorabilia. I got rid of doors generally. But that's the other bond of one of the circular tile, which is the way he used it most, which I really, really like the way the diagonals run and the straight lines run through it.
It's really great. Really works in here. So it feels quite nautical, right? The porthole window.
Yeah, well, the porthole window's been moved twice. That was once somewhere else, but it just again frames these strange views of London and this kit. A balcony we never use; they're too thin.
No.
It again goes back to Roger's Ogg's house and the idea of little portholes and all this polished walnut. Just kind of gives you a kind of warm honey-coloured backdrop, and that also picks up the light and fades differently. And then the skylights open, lift up and ventilate.
This is again a very modernist thing, isn't it? I mean, there's one of these at Willow Road, for example.
Yeah, but this is quite a good trick actually. This is simply a square, cheap-ish roof light that opens, but massively oversized.
Right.
And then the circular hole within it's as well for James Turrell. You don't see any framing, but it's actually bog standard polycarbonate.
The birds have not such a good view of it, but
no, they might stand on it and sit on it, but then that's part of the maintenance. And then this is a luxurious bathroom.
Yeah, so I'm intrigued by this. So there's two sets of shower heads and shower fittings.
Yeah, it's just, I mean.
So you're genuinely sometimes both in the shower at different ends.
And if we're not in it, our daughters will have come up and used the shower and taken the shampoo and taken the towels, and generally, as in any house, you've got your own space downstairs, you've got your own rooms, get out of ours. But children kind of gravitate towards you.
Why do they want to use yours?
Because it's yours.
Right.
Not because it's any better than theirs. They just children seem to want to take whatever you have and remove it from you. Your spirit, your morale, everything.
I don't know what you mean.
This used to be a double height space. It was very, very nice, but I wanted more space upstairs for an office. We've got enough space now. So we made this, I don't do glass floors, but this does actually allow that porthole up there to shine the way through here and give this space some light, because it's obviously landlocked space. So that pumps light into here. And then we have the youngest child lives here next to us, and then you talk about details. She thinks she's special because she's got a sliding door. The reason she's got a sliding door is I couldn't make any other door work. And then also, she's got also next to her a little art cupboard, so you can store all the pictures that are due to be framed or reframed or whatever. So it's actually quite a neat little thing.
And I noticed she's written "keep out" on the door.
Yeah, she does.
Children always do that, don't they?
Slightly less offensive than some of her notes.
No entry.
No entry. There's been much worse versions. So this staircase used to be fold up there around the double height space as a sort of ladder staircase. Then we turned this into a spiral was the only way to get up satisfactorily into that room without destroying the room. You could have dog-legged it, but the spiral was much neater and tighter. The oak, which is the flooring, as the stair, and then you've got the walnut again, uncut, modulated to work, coming around, making a circle, disappearing into the wall there. And then you come up the same orange handrail into the office. So this was our bedroom, and this staircase moved around during the project. The dogleg was too big, so I wanted to have two spaces. So this is where I work, so mirror kind of view of London through the key clamps, safety and security. We get quite nice distant views. Just all my architectural books, which are continuously thinned out, but I'm 61 now, so the collection's quite big. But the rule is they're books that I would like to look at.
It's an aspirational book.
Exactly.
More the Vitso shelving.
Yeah, more the Vitso shelving, which you don't really see, and then the stuff of life, cameras that are too beautiful, throw away. Someone made for my 60th this spun thing, which is my profile. Quite a fun. I didn't realise what it was. Quite a weird.
That's excellent.
Then this is the desk from my father's office that I had to cut off a little bit and then relit to get in here, but my view was I'd rather adapt it than not have it. And I've gone for the Adolf Loos idea that everyone has a different chair. So all the chairs here are slightly different. So you've got a Nemes chair, I've got a Danish chair from the 60s, and it's a very low desk, but it was designed for drawing on, so you're not, it's 660 rather than 720. And then this is a piece of furniture I made to divide the room up because it was slightly, that's a bit of useless space if I'm being honest, so I made a big unit.
You know, when you go to school to get the full lowdown from the teacher about how your child's doing, and they diminish you by parking on one of those tiny chairs. It's all a kind of power game, I think.
Yes, this is the opposite. This maximises you. You feel tall and powerful. You can stand in front and face the teacher. So this is where people come and I'll have a meeting. So I'll work there. I might draw here. People will come here. And again, there's all my notebooks, all FRS York's drawings from photographs of the modern house, are all archived here.
Oh wow!
And kept there. So it's an amazing collection, all the originals, and then it mixes up with Humphrey Repton's gardening book, that's the Frank Lloyd Wright set, mixed in with some Pete McKee's, this really nice, he listened to, obviously it was for my 60th, someone in the office organised it, he listened to the story of my life. That's the camper van we went travelling Europe in 1969. That's me as a 15-year-old. That's the only stand that's in Pevsner, the North Stand at Hillsborough, Cantilever North Stand, and then there's a quote from my daughter when a client was driving me mad. It was full of swear words she was allowed to put on a quote to kind of make me smile. And then there's a power room that drives the whole house, all the kit that drives the house. And this is a little kitchenette, so I've got the wine that I don't want people to drink in error. I'm not a wine collector, but you do find you get a very nice bottle of wine that's being used in the spaghetti bolognese. So anything that's any good gets moved up here, which I then bring down for consumption.
That's a good idea.
That's the mock-up of the details. I now use a
trivet.
A trivet, exactly. And then there's a little bathroom here. So we think of this really as a little flat.
Oh, so sweet.
So you could actually end up. We have too many bathrooms, but the idea is that one. I think it's Fiona's idea that if I ever can't get up that staircase, then we could put a carer in here. They can have this as a flat for me.
She's so romantic.
Exactly. And that's the amazing view. Which I say is, there's the new Renzo piano, Cube, in Paddington. But it's kind of, it's London's living skyline being endlessly, rather densely mapped up around the Edgware Road.
Totally.
And our own pepper pots, which we've been restoring, so kind of, you get this nice, and the chimney which we repaired, which always slightly worried me in wind, it's a sort of 14-foot high chimney that if it goes, we're gone.